It looks like we've been here before. I distinctly remember this being the first video last year, but I guess we're here again. We're back with our off-season review video, and for the second straight year, we're looking at the two first eliminated teams, and those are again the Sharks and the Blackhawks. We'll go to all the details about what they could be facing heading into this off-season and how they did this past year coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section below. Would love to hear your thoughts on all that was discussed here today. So today's video, we've got an off-season preview video here to discuss. I'm going to do it for every 32 teams. I'm going to do them in pairs. I'm going to do them as soon as they're been eliminated. So for the 16 teams who don't make the playoffs, I'm going to try and do them over the next couple of weeks. Then we'll do the 8 teams who were eliminated in round 1, the 4 teams who were eliminated in round 2, so on and so forth, until all 32 teams have had their playoffs and their regular seasons finished up. So we're going to start off with the first 2 teams who were eliminated from playoff contention this year, and it's the exact same first 2 teams who were eliminated from playoff contention last year, and that is the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks. These 2 teams, the Hawks at least were supposed to be taking at least a little bit of a step forward. The Sharks were probably bound to be another top 3 lottery pick, but both these teams are dead last in the Western Conference, the league. They don't look overly good right now. The Hawks haven't taken the step they wanted to, and the Sharks are being a bomb dweller again. They're a slight bit better than last year, but only slight. So interesting to know that these 2 teams were the first 2 teams eliminated. So basically what I'm going to do in these videos is break down their season so far, see how they did, give you guys some stats, see how they did throughout the season. I'm also going to give you reasons why I think they wound up missing the playoffs. Then I'm going to break down their UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming off season. And basically I'm going to give you 5 things I think this team's should do in the offseason to get better for next year. So we're going to start off with the San Jose Sharks because they were the first team to be eliminated. So I'm going to start off by looking at their point total players. So the highest 3-point total players at this point in time are William Eklund, Macklin Celebrini, and Tyler Toffoli. Eklund with 55 points, Celebrini with 54 points, and Toffoli with 49 points. So not very many players having the high level point scoring seasons you expect. On the goal scoring side, Toffoli leads the team with 28 goals, almost another 30 goal season for him. Celebrini as a rookie has 21 goals, which is actually fantastic. And then William Eklund, we'll see if he can hit the 20 goal mark. He's currently at 17 and third on the team in scoring. So interesting note there. Their current record is 20, 45, and 10. So they didn't reach the 21 mark last year. So it's a big step in the right direction, but it's only slightly bit better than last year. They had 193 goals for as of the recording of this video, which is good enough for 31st in the NHL if you go by goals for per game. And they have 280 goals against, which is good enough for dead last goals against per game in the NHL. So interesting note there. Not overly great stuff there for San Jose. They're second to last in goal scoring and they're dead last in goals against. And their power play, well, it hasn't been as bad as their scoring and defense has been. It's not overly great either. Their power play is running at 19.1%, which is good enough for 2030 in the NHL. And their penalty kill is running at 74.0%, which is good enough for 27th in the NHL. So like I said, not dead last like their offense and defenses, but they're still not overly great. So those are the stats for the Sharks as of right now, as of the recording of this video. 3 reasons I think this team missed the playoffs yet again this year for the 6th straight years. 1, this team was meant to tank. They were built in the off season to maybe get a little bit better, but this team, it was meant to have some more youth into this team, have some more experience for those younger players, and they were not meant to be a playoff caliber team. I think if they were even to get close to the playoff bar, that would have been a major surprise. So this team was meant to tank. They were meant to do bad this year. This was meant to be a growing year for a lot of those younger players like Celebrini, Will Smith, Eklund, Mukhamadullin, Thompson, like all those younger guys that they have in that system right now. This was meant to be a growing year for them. So they weren't meant to be a playoff team. That's the first reason I think they missed the playoffs. The second reason was the non-existent D or goaltending. Like goaltending wise, this team was not really great. Blackwood to start the season was actually doing quite well for the Sharks, but then he was dealt. They got some interesting pieces in return, and their goaltending this year just has not been overly great. Vanacek, Georgiev, Askarov has done all right and better than most of the goaltenders there, but he still hasn't been overly great, and Romanov recently have all not been overly great goaltending wise, and that defense is absolutely atrocious. There's a reason they are the dead last in goals against. So this team has no great defense right now. Their goaltending sucked this year, and that is another major reason as to why I think they missed the playoffs. And the last one is lack of scoring prowess. I mean, this team does have some really good scoring abilities, like Eklund's still doing really good this year, Toffoli's having a really good season, Celebrini He's having a pretty good rookie season. They've also got a couple of other contributors like a Alex Wenberg or a Will Smith. So they got some decent pieces here, but they don't have the depth scoring or the high firepower offense that other teams do to have really good solid scoring. Like they're 31st in goal scoring. So I think the lack of scoring, I think the fact that this team has not very good defense and crappy goaltending, and the fact that this team was meant to be a bad team this year were the three main reasons the Sharks did wind up missing out on the playoffs. So that's my breakdown of the Sharks season so far this year. Now going over to take a look at their significant pending UFAs, their significant pending RFAs, and their draft capital for this upcoming season. So if we look at their significant pending UFAs, there's not a whole bunch here. There's Pablo Reganda, who they acquired in season from Anaheim, hasn't gone to a game of NHL action this year. I could see him maybe brought back in like a one-year cheap deal. Could see him be let go. We'll have to wait and see. They also got Walker Duehr, who they claimed off of waivers, has 2 goals and 3 points in 24 games with the Sharks and Flames combined. Wouldn't be overly surprised if they let him go. You have Jan Ruda, who has 2 goals and 8 points in 51 games in his second season in San Jose. Had some injury troubles. Wouldn't be surprised if they walked away from him. And they also have Alex Georgiev, who has a 15-24-1 record with a 3.66 GAA and 874 save percentage, which is not overly good for a goaltender. So it hasn't been an overly great season there from Georgiev, which is why I do think that they'll probably walk away from him too. So I don't think they'll probably re-sign to any of their UFAs. Look at their RFAs. They do have a couple of interesting ones. They have Klim Kostin, Nikolai Kovalenko, Noah Gregor, Thomas Bordeleau, Carl Berglund, Brendan Coe, Daniel Gushchin, Jack Thompson, and Shakir Mukhamadullin. The only two defensemen are Thompson and Mukhamadullin. Both have NHL experience this year. Thompson has 6 points in 24 games. Mukhamadullin has 8 points in 28 games. Both look like they could eventually be solid third-pair defensemen. Wouldn't be overly shocked if they got more AHL time next year, but I think those two will probably wind up getting re-signed. You have Klim Kostin. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sharks walked away from him. You have Nikolai Kovalenko. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him like a 1 or 2 year deal. You have Noah Gregor. I wouldn't be overly surprised if they walked away from him again. You have Thomas Bordeleau, Carl Berglund, Brendan Coe, and Daniel Gushchin, who have played next to no NHL games this year, and I wouldn't be overly surprised if they were re-signed to keep in the AHL. So there's a couple of decent players here. Like I think Kovalenko will stay. I think Bordeleau will stay. I think Thompson Mukhamadullin will stay. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw Kostin and Gregor be let go, but those are RFAs that are on the bigger side of things that they have for this upcoming offseason. If we look at the current draft capital for 2025, they currently have 9 picks for this upcoming draft at this point. They could get more before the actual draft happens, but at this point in time, they have their own and the Dallas Stars first-round picks. They have their own and the Ottawa Senators second-round picks. They have the Colorado Avalanche's third-round pick. They have the St. Louis Blues and Winnipeg Jets fourth-round pick. They have the Colorado Avalanche's fifth-round pick. They have no sixth-round picks right now. And they also have the New Jersey Devils' seventh-round pick. So 9 picks, which is 2 more than what you'd expect as an average team to have. So really good stuff there. 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. So really good stuff there for San Jose, and I really like what they've built with their draft capital. And lastly, going over to 5 things I think this team should do to improve in the offseason. So first would be consider moving Mario Ferraro. Now Ferraro has been a really solid defender for that Sharks team on that blue line. He's been one of their veteran leaders. He is still on the younger side of things, but he will be entering the final year of his deal this offseason, and not this offseason, but the upcoming offseason, he will be a UFA. So due to that fact, I do think they should try and consider moving Ferraro. He will get them a really solid haul on the open market, as a lot of teams I think will really value a top 4 defenseman who plays a shutdown type role on the younger side of things. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but I would definitely suggest that the Sharks should try and look at moving Mario Ferraro. Number 2 is figure out what to do with Marc-Edouard Vlasic and Logan Couture. Couture, I don't think has played at all this year. This has been the 2nd straight season he's missed basically due to injuries. So I think they got to figure out what to do with Couture moving forward. Like, is he going to be healthy? If he's going to be healthy, do they want to keep him around and have him be a veteran leader on this team? Or do they maybe want to try and move off of him and try and give him a fresh start somewhere? I think his health really depends on what happens with Couture. When it comes to Vlasic, I think he's got either this upcoming season left or this upcoming season plus 1 more season left at a $7 million cap hit. At this point, he's been healthy scratched a whole bunch of times. He's had a whole bunch of injury troubles this year. Like, I'm not sure if he's the greatest fit in San Jose anymore. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was healthy enough that they maybe consider a buyout or try to move him somewhere else with half of his cap hit retained. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But I think the Sharks team really needs to figure out what they're going to do about Vlasic and Couture. Third, I think they need to give some other players solid lines in training camp next year. I think some of these younger guys need to start proving themselves at the NHL level. So a guy like Musty, a guy like Sam Dickinson, Zach Ostapchuk, who they acquired at the deadline, Thomas Bordeleau, who's played an entire season in the AHL. Like, these guys guys plus a couple of other guys I think really need to try and get solid roles on the NHL roster. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but I think giving some of the younger kids top 9 on the forward group or top 4 on the defensive end roles on this team would be a smart move there for the Sharks. I think the fourth thing they need to consider this year in the offseason is add some more defensive help. This team is not overly great defensively. We've seen them this year. They are not a great team defensively. So I personally do believe that they will need to try and improve this blue line on top of moving Mario Ferraro, potentially bringing some of their younger players like a Thompson or Mukhamadullin on full-time roles. I do think adding a top 4 defenseman or maybe 1 or 2 top 6 defensemen in the offseason, whether that be via trade, moving some of their draft capital, or whether that be trying to acquire them in the free agent market, we'll have to wait and see. But I definitely think adding some defensive help has to be a priority this year for San Jose Sharks. And I also think the Sharks team should either sign or trade 2 to 3 top 9 forwards this year, trying to bolster that forward group. Like I said, this team has a lot of really solid young talent on the forward group. Like Celebrini, Smith, Eklund have been phenomenal this year. And I think they have some more young prospects coming up. They're probably going to get a top 3 pick in this year's draft again. And that might wind up having a player who is NHL ready. But I do think they need to try and add 2 to 3 top 9 forwards. Maybe someone on a longer term deal who's maybe on the younger side of things if they were trying to target someone in free agency, or maybe like an older veteran who could help for the next 2 years. Like maybe something like the Chicago Blackhawks are doing, like a Patrick Maroon or Craig Smith, or just try and bolster that forward group. I'm not exactly sure what they'll try and do, but I definitely think adding 2 to 3 top 9 forwards could be a really big smart move there for the Sharks. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But those are the 5 things I think the Sharks should do in the offseason to try and improve for next year and at least get a tiny bit better. Like I don't think the Sharks are going to be a playoff team next year, but if they can get out of like the bottom 3 of the league, I think that would be a step in the right direction. When it comes to the Blackhawks, if we take a look at what they did this past year, if you look at their goal scoring and point scoring leaders as they're recording this video, their point scoring leaders are Ryan Donato and Connor Bedard, who are both 1 point shy of 60 at 59 points, and Teuvo Teravainen, who's been a fantastic find in the offseason with 56 points for the Blackhawks. And if you look at their goal scoring leaders, Tyler Bertuzzi and Connor Bedard are tied for second on the team with 20 goals, while Ryan Donato has a career high in goals, leading the team with 29. He's a goal away from 30. Donato has had one heck of a season. He's been one of the few bright spots in that Hawks organization. So really good stuff there from Donato. He's been one of the bright spots, but still, this team's not overly great. They have a record of 21, 44, and 10. They're only a couple of points ahead of the San Jose Sharks. These 2 teams are basically guaranteed at this point. Maybe not mathematically, but it seems that they'll be the top 2 teams in the draft rankings when it comes to the draft lottery simulations. So it seems that that's sort of where we're going with the Hawks and the Sharks. But when it comes to what other things the Hawks did this past year, if you look at their goal scoring, they have 202 goals, which goals for per game would put them 27th in the NHL, so not overly great. It's better than the Sharks, but it's just still not overly great. When it comes to the goals against category, they are the next team above the San Jose Sharks. They've given up 269 goals against, and for goals against per game, that is tied for 31st in the NHL. So they have not had an overly great defense. Goal scoring wise, they have been a little bit better than the San Jose Sharks, but they're still not by any means a good goal scoring team, and Denal probably has a huge impact as to why they're at least not in the dead last basin like the Sharks are. If you go over to the power play and PK, they're actually quite good on special teams. Their power play is clicking at 24.6%, which is good enough for 10th in the NHL. Their PKs click in at 81.1%. That's good enough for 9th in the NHL. So they have a top 10 power play and a top 10 penalty kill, which is absolutely surprising given where they are in the standings right now. But still, even though they have top 10 power play unit and top 10 PK, it's still not enough to get them out of the basement of the West in the league. And 3 reasons I think this team missed the playoffs this year is 1, just like the San Jose Sharks, this team's not built for the playoffs. They were supposed to get a little bit farther than they did last year, maybe get to like 60, 65 points, take a little bit of a step forward, but this team, just like the Sharks, they're not built for the playoffs. They have some decent veterans. They have a couple of younger guys coming up in the lineup, but like this team is still a couple of years away from the playoffs. So once again, just the Sharks not being built for the playoffs is a big reason as to why this team did not wind up doing very much this year. Second was bad goaltending. Now, since coming over at the trade deadline, Spencer Knight has actually done quite well in net, but before that, Arvid Soderblom and Peter Mrazek weren't overly great for the Blackhawks, and Drew Commesso, who got a couple of games of NHL action, also didn't do overly great. So the goaltending was not overly great here for the Blackhawks. Blackhawks and a big reason as to why this team is not doing overly well and is one of the worst teams goals against wise in the NHL. So bad goaltending. And third was a young blue line. Now this team does have some decent veterans, like they had Seth Jones before they moved him at the trade deadline. They have Alec Martinez when he's been healthy. They have TJ Brody and a couple of other decent veterans. This is primarily a young blue line. They've got Alex Vlasic, who's only got a couple of years of experience. They've got Del Maestro. They've got Korchinski a couple of times came up. They had Nolan Allen come up a couple of times. There was a couple of other guys like Louis Crevier and Wyatt Kaiser. So it was a predominantly young blue line that this Blackhawks team had this year. And they had guys from more third pair guys playing like the top four. So this team, especially with the young blue line, was not going to be overly great this year. And I think that shows with their goals against at this point in time. So the fact that this team was not built for the playoffs, the fact that this team before Spencer Knight had really terrible goaltending, and the fact that this team had quite a young blue line were three main reasons, in my opinion at least, as to why this Blackhawks team did not do overly well this year and fell so far out of it. So interesting note there. When you go over to their significant pending UFAs, significant pending RFAs, and draft capital for this offseason, there's not a whole bunch of contracts that are about to expire for the Blackhawks. If you look at their UFAs, there's Andreas Antonescu. He played 8 games before being placed on waivers and sent down to the minors for the Blackhawks. I highly doubt he gets brought back. You have Sanford and Gutman, who are basically entirely AHL players this year. Highly doubt they get brought back. You have Alec Martinez, who had 12 points in 43 games this year. I could potentially see him be brought back in like a 1-year deal, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if he was let go as well. And then you have the big guy, Ryan Donato, who has 29 goals and 59 points in 72 games. Like, Donato has been clicking so far this year, and he's looked great. So if there was one guy in the UFA market I think that would probably bring back, it would be Donato. Besides that, I wouldn't be surprised if none of their UFAs are back. If you look at their RFAs, they got Philip Kurashev, Antti Cirelli, Aku Ratu, Louis Crevier, Wyatt Kaiser, and Arvid Soderblom. They sounds like the Blackhawks do want to keep Soderblom as Knight's backup, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got brought back. He's a 3.17 GAA, an 899 save percentage, and an 817-7 record, so not terrible numbers for a young goalie on a bad team, just not overly great. Crevier and Kaiser both got into game action this year. Kaiser had 49 games played, putting up 8 points. Crevier had 4 points in 30 games played, so both were decent defenders. They look like they're going to eventually be third, second pair defensemen, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Hawks brought those guys back. Cirella, Ratu, both didn't play the NHL level this year. They're both older prospects. I wouldn't be overly surprised if they didn't give them qualifying offers, but I also wouldn't be overly surprised if they brought them back on like 1 or 2 year deals. When it comes to Philip Kurashev, after a career season last year, he only had 6 goals and 12 points in 46 games this year. It sounded like there was a lot of speculation that the Hawks were going to move on from Kurashev in the offseason, whether it be via a trade or just not bring him back. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if Kurashev wasn't back with the Hawks, but those are some interesting RFAs that the Hawks have for this upcoming offseason. If you look at their draft capital for this upcoming season, they, just like the San Jose Sharks, have 9 picks in this upcoming draft as it sits right now. Once again, could wind up being more depending on what they do before the draft, but at this point in time, they have 9. They have theirs and the Toronto Maple Leafs first round picks. They have theirs and the Dallas Stars second round picks. They have their own third round pick, theirs and the New York Rangers fourth round pick. They don't have a fifth round pick, but they do have their own 6th and 7th round picks. So they basically have all of their picks that they originally had, except for their 5th rounder, and they also have the Rangers 4th, the Stars 2nd, and the Leafs 1st. So 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. Really good stuff there for the Hawks. They'll be able to hit home with a couple of really solid picks there, because those are probably going to be some higher end picks along with some lower end picks. So interesting note there. But having 4 out of the first 64 picks is really good. So interesting note there. But the Hawks do have 9 picks for this upcoming draft. And lastly, going over to 5 things I think the Blackhawks should do in the offseason to try and improve and get better for next year. So first, which I think is probably the most pressing need, that is a Ryan Donato extension. Donato has been such a fantastic player for this Blackhawks team. It's not even funny. Like 29 goals. He'll probably hit the 30 goal mark before the end of the season. He'll probably hit the 60 point mark for the end of the season. For a guy who I think his career high was like 25 points, that is a major improvement. And I think if they were to sign him to like a 3-4 year deal at like $4 to $5 million, I think he could be a stellar middle 6 addition for not only this upcoming season, but for the future. So I think a Ryan Donato extension is the most pressing concern for the Blackhawks. And I think something that this Hawks team needs to do, because if they let him walk as UFA, that's a huge loss on their forward group and their scoring abilities from this past year. So, interesting note there. The second thing I think the Blackhawks should do this offseason will be to sign or trade for a big winger to play with Connor Bedard. Now, Bedard has had some really good chemistry with a guy like Donato this year and Ilya Mikheyev, which has worked out really well. But I personally do not believe Donato and Mikheyev are solid top-line guys. Even guys like Teravainen and Bertuzzi, who they signed this past offseason and have done well, like Bertuzzi's hit 20 goals, Teravainen's closing in on 60 points. Even though they've done well, I think they're more second-line players. So I think that the Blackhawks should try and either spend some of their draft capital, either for this year or for the future, or try and take a run at one of the bigger UFAs on the free agent market and try and bring in someone who can play top-line minutes with Bedard. Try and bring Bedard's level of play up a little bit, because I think Bedard's hit 60 points, I think, over the past 2 years in each of those 2 seasons, which is good. But if you have like a stellar winger to play and feed him the puck, like I think it could be a very fantastic 30-40 goal player, maybe 85-90 point player, at least in the next year or two. So I think they should try and spend some resources or go on for agency and get a stellar winger to play with Bedard this offseason. Another thing I think they should do is also, just like the Sharks, let some of their younger players get into bigger roles, either a top 4 defensive role or a top 9 forward role. Guys like Korchinski on the blue line, or Levshunov, or a guy like Nazar, or more on the forward group. Like I think they should try and have some more youth in that team to try and play with all those older players that they still have in the system right now. So I feel like that's another thing that the Hawks should do. It's probably not something for the offseason, it's more for training camp and the start of next season, but I do think they should continue to try and add some more youth to this team. The fourth thing I think they should do this offseason is add a top 4 defenseman. Now, as much as they did get off of that long-term contract and they were able to get rid of him, Seth Jones was a big minute muncher in this past year for the Blackhawks. He was a really good top 4 defenseman. So now they don't have that. They're either thrusting one of their younger guys like a Korchinski or Levshunov into a top pair role as early as next year, or they should probably try and find someone who can play top 4 minutes. Now, once again, I don't know if this will be via free agency or via trade market, not exactly sure, but I think one of the priorities has to be adding a top 4 defenseman. Like I think Korchinski, Levshunov can maybe play in like the top 4 next year with maybe a guy like Connor Murphy who's still there, but I think they really need to add one more veteran level top 4 defenseman, maybe on like a short-term deal if it's an older guy, or if they can find a younger guy, maybe sign to like a longer-term deal. But I definitely think the Hawks should try and improve that top 4 to sort of give them more cushion around their younger players. And lastly is to get some more bottom 6 help. We've seen this team, they have a lot of really good middle 6 forwards, especially if they're able to sign Randy Donato. But Patrick Maroon's going to retire at the end of the season. They moved off Craig Smith at the deadline. So I think if they could get some more guys to sort of play 4th line minutes, maybe 3rd line minutes, and maybe provide a little bit of depth scoring. Not exactly sure who they try and target, but if they could try and target some of these guys to sort of round out that forward group this offseason, I think it'd be a really smart move there for the Hawks to sort of just help insulate the younger guys. So those are 5 things I think the Hawks should try and do in the offseason that I think could wind up helping them get better for the future. So definitely, that's my opinion on the Sharks and the Hawks. That's how they've done up until this point in the season. That's how I feel like they missed the playoffs. Those are their significant UFAs and RFAs plus their draft capital. And those are the 5 ways I can see the Sharks and the Hawks approaching the offseason to try and make these teams better for the future. So definitely, that's all I'm going to talk for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. What was your opinion on the Sharks and the Hawks? Did they both disappoint this year? Did you expect them to be bottom 2 in the league again this year? And what do you think these 2 teams should do to improve for the offseason? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. But definitely, that's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. And if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I'll never be able to do this without you guys. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. Really help the channel. And don't forget to leave a comment. I also have a blog, talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So I'm going to check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. And I cannot wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.